This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We are just looking forward to today's conversation. You were sitting there waiting for the recording session to come up so that you could talk about this. Like the kid on Christmas morning going, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yes. Well, it's about AI.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And it's a lot going on these days. A lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm carefully, meticulously going through each thing and parsing out this and thinking about each one of them. Because if you look at things as a whole, you'll just give up. Like this is we're all done.
Yep.
But with AI, I look at it historically. AI sort of, with a broad brush, has been coming along all along, with computers and everything. And
right.
People said, no, it's not going to last. And that's ridiculous. Progress, anything that
no,
is...
It's not gonna, good for you.
Anything that has even a small p progress, it's going to happen. Because I think that's the way the universe works, how life works. It just keeps moving and moving. And it's not going to move and stay the same. It's always going to be some enhancements or whatever. So this one happens to be a big one. Maybe not so big as we think, because I think it's been creeping in all along. But now it's here. And it is quite frightening, because I hear people talk about their jobs and being replaced. And actually, I went to a restaurant and it was a robot that came to the table and took the order. It was fascinating, but it was also a little bit, I wasn't worried about my food. I was worried about okay, so here's a couple people out of a job right here. I could see that. Mm-hmm. So that's the big concern. But here's my big concern. Let me say my biggest concern is that it will make people not think. You know what I mean? You become, I'm trying to not say ugly words. You become a drone, because things are happening, even in, I don't know. Okay, let me just say this. Let's say people get chat or whatever the thing is, whatever one you choose, to write your sermon.
Yep.
Or to write your books. They're saying we can write your ebooks and we'll get them published. What happens to the brain? Do you know what happens to that makes me concerned. I think it's the products that come out of AI, wonderful. You can tell by just this whole segment right here, I can be extremely wordy. So I'll take my 3-page whatever, dump it in chat and say, I need help condense this, please. That, my prompts are real simple. Just say this better, whatever. Right. And it gives me something. So I would never be able to do it, because it just shrinks that one page down to a short paragraph. I'm elated. I'm out there. I'm happy. But I'm not trying to get my book published. I want to do my own work. Does it make people stupid? You know what I mean? Are we going toward that?
Well, at the risk of sounding harsh or critical, people don't need machines to make them stupid. People have a long history of being stupid all on their own.
Well, okay. Did I bring this to the right person?
And that said, there's a couple of different ways that you just described using artificial intelligence and what we would describe as generative AI, which is the one where you can give it some words and it'll come back, it'll put some words together. The way that you're using it is letting AI do some editing and some basically some formatting and summarizing to take the ideas that you have come up with and said, distill this down to a shorter version of this, or to a summary, or to a title. And especially when you're getting down to the really short ones, I like to say to make my prompt to the generative AI, give me 3 or 5 different suggested titles for this. Mm-hmm. Give me 3 versions of a summary of this content. And the benefit of that is that it's starting with what I started with, and it's narrowing it down, and it's applying the rules of communication and the rules of literature and grammar and punctuation to figure out how can I make this into a short sentence that gets the essence of what was already in the message there. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of reductive. And especially when you tell it, give me 3 or 5 different versions, it's going to give me if it gives me 5 versions, I know that I have 4 that I don't like, or I might have 3 that I don't like and 2 that I'm going to combine together. So there'll be a bunch of garbage. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times people, and you use, when you're talking about thinking, if you just say, give me 1 version, it's as likely to give you the first one that you would have thrown out as the miraculous, the home run version. Mm-hmm. When we have 5 versions, we get to make an evaluation. We get to bring our brains back into it and say, what is it? Which one of these suggestions is actually saying what I wanted to be saying? Mm-hmm. Take that in the opposite direction. You say to people, let ChatGPT write your book. Well, ChatGPT in that case is going to take the topic that you have for the book and go find all of the information that's ever been written or that was ever written as of 3 years ago or whenever the large language model got programmed. And it's going to give you the best seeming ideas from that time and make that be your book. So your book is going to say exactly the best things that everybody else has already said. Does that make it a good book? It makes it as good as all of the other books. But it doesn't make it your book. It just makes it your topic and everybody else's, not even best information, just most common information. Mm-hmm. Technically, the way that the generative AI works is you say, give me the content based on this, and it'll start with a word, and then it'll find the other words on that topic that seem to follow in the right progression, and it'll give you the most likely, most effective, most often used combinations. It's going to tell you exactly what other people have told you, and possibly more efficiently and more concisely, but it's always going to be something that somebody else already said. It's not thinking anything up.
Mm-hmm. So that's the real of it. Mm-hmm. How many people on the planet are going to even look at it from that perspective? It's use this. Now, here's, these are the commercials that are on. And I'm on, what is this? Whatever it is, like YouTube or something. Mm-hmm. And it's telling you, it's AI all over the place. You can ask AI, da-da-da-da-da-da. And right. It's all this excitement. And I'm thinking, but I don't want what you just said. I don't want the best of all 150 people or 1,000. I want
everybody who's ever written anything.
Yeah. I mean, I love ancient wisdom and sacred texts and all that. I love that. I would even say, give me information from that. But I don't want the whole thing. Now that's me. That's me. Mm-hmm. what I'm probably overthinking this, I'm sure. But people will disappear.
Don't discredit yourself for overthinking something, because most people are going in the opposite direction at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I just kind of want to make sure I'm not being negative. That was a big part of why I brought it up, because I know that you know the intricacies of this and you understand that better than I do. I just don't want the human mind to disappear. And because of laziness. This is a quick way to do this. And like your brain can shrink. If you don't use it. Use it. And but that's never discussed. And of course it wouldn't be, because that's not going to sell any money.
It's not going to be discussed by the people who are selling the tools and talking about how great they are. So here's a scenario, and this is sort of a philosophical scenario. So there's the grand champion chess masters, the people who are at the top of their game playing chess, and there are some of them who can play 6 different games against different opponents at the same time and keep all of the games in their head and be able to play back and forth. And they're world-class chess players. And you get the two top chess players in the world to play against each other, and it's a real battle to see how it is that they're going to approach the game. You get a computer program in there that has been trained to play chess, which is a very complicated game, but it has a very specific set of rules and a really limited set of possibilities. Like the board is only going to be so big and there's only going to be so many pieces. And for a long time, there was a competition. Can the computer beat the chess master? And I think it was IBM's Watson, a supercomputer. And they finally got it to the point where it could consistently beat the chess master. So then you get a second Watson computer, and you have the two computers play against each other. And do you care who wins? No, it becomes boring. Ho-hum. Yeah. So what? And I think the lesson in that is lost on most of us. Like, there's lots of work that AI can do. How important is that work? It's work that maybe people used to do. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was actually thinking about this today. So we're recording the podcast now, and I have a penchant for high quality audio and high production values. So when we started doing the podcast 198 episodes ago, I did the post-production myself, where I would take the tracks and I would mix them together and put the intro and the outro and the breaks and all the rest of that. And then I would go through and take out the extraneous noises, the ticks and the ums and the uhs and the delays and the rest of it. And it took a few hours to do each half-hour episode. We lost track of time. Now they're 45 or 50-minute episodes. And I had other things that I wanted to do. So I got a guy who I could send the voice tracks to, who would then produce it into the episode, and he would cut out the ums and uhs. And then he stopped doing that, and I found somebody else. And the current guy is taking the episode, and he's making the audio volumes mastered so that everything is matching and it sounds as good as it can, and he puts the intros and the outros and so forth on. But he doesn't take out the ums and the uhs. Well, every once in a while, as I'm listening through one of these before I put it on, it's like, oh, I'm saying a lot. So maybe I should go through and clean it up. And I can do that. I know how. It's a skill that I have. It's not a particularly good use of my time. And there are AI tools that you can take the recording and give it to the AI tool, and it'll take out the ums and the uhs. And I'm thinking, do I want to do that? And then it becomes a question of, how valuable is that? How many people who are listening to the audio version of this podcast now are going to say, ooh, I'm going to stop listening if he says again. Or, wow, he really got rid of the ums and the uhs in this episode. There would be almost 15 seconds that would be added onto the length of the entire episode if the ums were still there. Is that going to make a difference? So if we can do something, does that mean we should do something? And where's the value of, first of all, being able to do it ourselves? of not having to spend the time doing it ourselves? And is it worth doing to begin with?
100% I'm with you, because exactly the same thing I had gone through. And it was a struggle because I thought I developed this skill and I feel good about this skill to be able to take out this, and this, right? And not to mention it takes an hour to do all that. But you hit the nail on the head. How important is this? In terms of my time, that's number one. And nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Somebody cares, but not enough people care enough to make it worth doing.
When long years ago, when you were taught how to make speeches and you went to whatever the thing was,
Toastmasters. I
forget now. Yeah. And then whatever one, every time you said, somebody would ring a bell. So that would trigger the da, 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 da. Now you look at videos, nobody gives a flip. It's yeah, it's okay.
Yep.
That's just where it is. But is that a bad thing? I don't know.
I had a job, and this was early 1980s. Remember beautiful music, elevator music?
Mm-hmm.
The 101 strings. And the music at that point was on LPs, on vinyl. And so I had a part-time job working for a company that had a beautiful music service. So they would send the reels of tape around to whoever was going to be running the elevators or whatever it was. And the guy who I worked for, and I was part-time in the evenings, it was his job to put together the master tapes. So he had this incredibly high-quality audio studio with the best turntable in the world. And so he would take the 101 strings LP and he would clean it meticulously and get rid of the static, and he would put the needle down on it. He would record the whole thing on the high-speed tape. Now, usually, recording tape goes at 7.5 inches a second. The fast ones went at 15. He did this at 30. So it would go through an entire reel of tape, would be 15 minutes, one of the big reels. And if you remember vinyl, every once in a while there'd be a crackle or a tick or a pop or something based on there's a little divot in the vinyl, and it's just the sort of thing that you're used to if you listen to vinyl. My job was to go play back the tape and listen for the ticks and the pops, and then go in with a razor blade and cut out the ticks and the pops, which was a little tiny piece of tape, maybe 1/4 of an inch long, that had the tick on it. And you could cut that out and it wouldn't interfere with the rest of it. And that was my job. And I got paid okay for it, enough to make it worthwhile going there after my other job. And the question is, really? Really? How important was that? How many people are going to say, I'm getting off this elevator if there's another tick or pop?
You do have to make that assessment, and it's generational thing too as well, because I'll do something, and I know how to make reels and shorts and all that,
mm-hmm.
But I like complete sentences. I like complete thoughts. I like it to, so they got these new, it's AI, you put the thing in and it chops it all up, right? And it just puts, and your head is going this way and you finish the sentences, bam, it's done. And you're like, what was the thought here? They didn't finish this, and I'm going nuts. Now, here's the thing. In terms of productivity, it's taken me all day,
mm-hmm.
To get the thing done. This thing they're talking about, you can put out 75 in a minute, or, exaggerating, right. But you can put out 20 times as much as what I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm like, oh no, I want a complete thought. And, and this thing is going, now you're talking about likes and shares and donations and whatever it is monetarily,
whatever your metric is. Yep.
and all of that's tied into it. So here I am standing in the dark ages talking about, but I want mine to be a complete thought.
Mm-hmm.
I want it because I don't want my head looking like nobody cares.
We don't know that nobody cares. We don't know if nobody cares. If you get somebody who goes back and looks at those VHS tapes of you that were recorded in 1987,
mm-hmm.
and you look at what you were wearing and you look at what your hair looked like and you go, oh my God, how did I ever let that get out into the world? It may wind up being the same thing 5 or 10 years from now. We don't know. We don't know if anybody's going to come to their senses. What you're talking about is the equivalent of somebody saying, wow, this chef in this restaurant, this cook, is meticulously putting these high-quality steaks on the grill and paying attention to each one of them and flipping them and turning them and being a professional about it. It would be so much easier to take that meat, throw it into the grinder, turn it into hamburgers, and you make every hamburger the same way. You can put it on an assembly line, and how much quicker that is. And that might be true, but you also might have missed the point. Quality. There might be something different that we're going for. Let's take a break. We will we'll listen to a little promotion for a book that was not written with artificial intelligence. And when we continue, we'll talk about what happens when artificial intelligence creates a prayer.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione.
We're having a fascinating conversation about artificial intelligence and how we can save time or improve quality or just sort of gloss over the fact that we used to be interested in one thing and now we're interested in something else. Before the break, though, I promised to talk about artificial intelligence and practical prayer. And I did an exercise in my practitioner class last year. And I went into ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT to create a 5-step practical prayer, spiritual mind treatment, the same thing, for prosperity, and to label the steps. And it came out with a 5-step practical prayer for prosperity, and it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. Now, as an instructor, I would have pointed out a couple of things, but overall, for that part of the class, we were in the first year and the second term, it was not bad. And the question for the class is, okay, so this is a prayer for prosperity. Whose prosperity are we praying for? And is this an effective prayer? And is it going to create a result? Because we call it practical prayer for real results. What result is this prayer going to create? So I came up with my own conclusion, but I'll ask you, Carol, what your thoughts are on that.
I was listening really carefully because I went through something years ago. What you're talking about doesn't bother me that much at all, really. Let me tell you why. Because in my community, in the African American church, back in the day, the majority of the churches probably didn't have money to buy prayer books.
Mm-hmm.
They did not have money to buy prayer books. They could, hymnals was it. Bring your own Bible. So fast forward to when I got to seminary, which was really, because I went to seminary in my 40s. So this was really far. Anyway, I went to a service and they handed me a prayer book. And I'm on the program, and this is like, we're getting ready to go in, and they said, you do the prayer, here's the book. I didn't know what the heck to do with the book. I had never seen a prayer book in my life. I didn't know that there was such a thing. And to me, it was incredibly inauthentic and just ungodly.
What? We're going to get this out of a book? What, are you crazy?
That's right. Because in my tradition, you pray from your heart. You better, and that's what and I'm thinking, I can't with any dignity whatsoever stand in front of and read this out of a book. And okay, so let's get past that experience.
Did you read it out of the book?
No, I didn't. I was so upset.
I knew that you weren't going to.
Well, I felt forced, but the person in charge ran interference and said, "Don't worry about it. Just do it your way." And I did it. Okay, I did it my way. But that bothered me because there was this book. How I had to deal with this. It wasn't going to go away. It was a reality. The only place that didn't have prayer books were in poor churches. And I'm looking at a whole different new world now. And I had to come to some thing about it. So I took the book and I read the prayers, and they were absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. Really beautiful. Took me a while because they were poetry first, and then there whatever. And I had to make all the whatever adjustments in my head and all that stuff. But they were absolutely beautiful. Now, to this day, no, I don't do a prayer book. But however, I wouldn't hesitate to reach for one if I wanted to. Right. Do you know what I mean? I don't have any. So it's the same thing, I think, with practical prayer. For me, that was an exceptionally difficult thing to learn. I think it was probably the biggest hurdle for me to make from religion to spirituality. It just was big. Mm-hmm. So now I'm on this side, so to speak, and I think, okay, I get it. I understand. This is no big deal. We can do this. So if the AI spews it out to me, they're words, but they're mine. The spirit, all of that is what I bring to it.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
You have hit the nail on the head, and this is exactly the same conclusion that the class came to, is what AI generated was a very effective series of words. It was very pretty, well put together, nicely structured, followed all the rules. It was basically a book quality version of a practical prayer. There was no spiritual energy in it. There was no consciousness in it whatsoever. This is just a series of words that can work. Mm-hmm. In order for that prayer to be effective, somebody has to read it and believe it. Mm-hmm. And it's not the words, and it's not even the reading that gives the prayer its power. It's the believing that those words are true that gives the prayer its power. And that's why I say, the Practical Prayer for Real Results book is 40 prayers, and it's very specifically, these are some that will serve as a starting point for you. These are nicely written and eloquent and thought out, and there's a little blank space in each prayer so that you can put in your own affirmation, because it's not the last word in the prayer. So if somebody's facing a surgical procedure and they want a prayer for a successful surgical procedure, you start with the one that's in the book. And then you go into exactly what the specifics are that you want to be experiencing in the surgical procedure. And if there's something scary about it, then you bring that into the prayer as well. And suddenly it's not about what's in the book, it's about what's in the belief system, including what's in the pivot. I'm thinking this is going to be a problem, well, I'm going to turn over in this direction. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Mm-hmm. And when artificial intelligence creates the prayer, it's nothing. It's nothing until somebody reads it and believes it and puts the power into it with their consciousness. Mm-hmm. Is what ChatGPT wrote something that I believe? Because the words are put together in a way that induces or inspires my believing. Do I believe this? And if I do, that's when it becomes active.
Yeah. And I look at things now. This is a tool to help me, or that I could use to maybe do something quicker or better or smooth it over. Do you know what I mean? Get the rough edges out. Because when I ask Chat to look at something, I'm not looking for Chat to come back and say, oh, no, this is wrong, da, 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 da. It's taking off the rough edges. It's taking out the unnecessary words that I'm putting in. You know, I'm describing something and I'm taking 5 lines to describe it, and it's just taking all that out. And I'm looking, thinking, this is exactly what I'm saying. It's just saying it better.
Right.
So I'm still there. Right. You know, the God voice, you know, the divine or whatever is still there. It's just said in a better way, more efficient, which allows me to do more, you know. And it's also, to me, a teaching tool, because I've looked at stuff that it has given back to me, and I'm thinking, okay, now you got to learn how to say the. You got. There's a little. I call him a little dude. He's not a little dude. He's in his 20s, but he does something on YouTube, and it's very much what I do. But his language, his everything is different. It's just wildly different. And I look at him because he gives me language that I don't have.
Right.
That is better for 2025. And so, since I'm going to say these, right, I'm not packing it in, right? So since I got all this gray hair, I need some current language so that I'm not obviously this woman with the gray hair that you're not going to hear. So I look at this little guy who I thought was, I can't even handle this. But I see he's giving me language. Now, some of the language he uses I can't use, but
yep.
But I said, okay, I get it. And so we're made better. That's what I mean about the progress part. We can use it to be better, but not in place of.
Right.
Because then what happens to you? And then here I'll go to my thing again. You know, I don't want to do all that, but can I just tell you one more thing? Yeah. I was looking at Elton John, and he was singing, I guess that's why they call it the blues, something. It came on, and I said, oh, let me look at this. I haven't heard it in a while. And it was obviously it was an old thing. And the orchestra, they were people doing the music. And I was just so fascinated, like I always am, to see. And I imagined what had to happen, what kind of energy, what kind of God movement was in this to get everybody to play this beautiful music together like that. And so I'm just almost teary-eyed because I can see it. Now, ain't nobody playing anything. They're pushing the buttons. What happened to the synergy, the divine synergy and all of that?
It's not like nobody is playing the instruments. It's like not as many people are because now there's an alternative. As you were talking, I was thinking about a friend of mine from high school, Adrienne, who's a percussionist, and she's continued to be a percussionist. And there's a thing on social media a couple of weeks back about how she and the orchestra were playing in a church and they were performing from the upper choir loft. And the video was about her and her son lugging the timpani up the stairs into the choir loft. Because who thinks of that? before you even get to the point where the conductor is going to point at you and say play. It's like, no, I gotta get these 4 drums from my house up into the choir loft. Yeah. And how much is it worth? How valuable is it? And or do we attach value to those things? When people were talking to me years ago about doing a podcast, and I spent 10 years in the broadcasting business, and I had an attitude, and I'm very freely admit that I had an attitude, because it used to be when I was going to go and do an hour or 2 or 4 hours, somebody would have to go and get a license from the Federal Communications Commission and build a very tall tower and buy an expensive transmitter and let me be the only person using it for those 4 hours in order to make it worthwhile. Like, no, we want you to be doing this. And by the way, there are only 18 of these in town, and you get 1/18 of whatever is available for people who are going to be listening. And that's different than pumping something into podcast land. And I had an attitude about that. So the question for me these days, and I don't have an answer, if I were on a 100,000 watt FM station and it were a particular time of day in a major market, would I produce the show and let it go out the way that it goes out now? Are my production values, are my standards as high as they would be if somebody had bought a 100,000 watt transmitter for me? And that's a question that we all get to ask ourselves. Because if it's still got that level of value, if I'd listened to this person, whether they're on the broadcast or they're on national network, or if it's something that happens to be on a USB drive that I found in the parking lot, if the value is in the content, then it's different than let's make sure that the production values of the content match whatever the communication media is.
It's a tough call. It really is. I was also thinking, I was watching a Tina Turner concert, and my husband said, he looked at it and he said something entirely different. We weren't discussing it. He just said, can you imagine all the 18-wheelers that it took to get all of that equipment there and set it up, and the lights, and how much it cost? And I'm looking like, do you see this fabulous, whatever? But look at all that it took to make it happen.
Yep.
And now you could do it, almost push button, and everybody's happy. Yeah, I mean, I could see the difference.
Yeah, and rock and roll tours or, music tours still have 18-wheelers filled with lots of stuff because they want to take whatever the artistic content is and make it a valuable presentation.
But clearly not what it was, before. It doesn't have to be. I just don't want
more computers now.
Yes. And I think computers are good, and I don't want to be, like poo-pooing. I just don't want people to lose their giftedness and, their creativity. Just give it away or let it die. Because it's gotten us so much beauty this far. I don't want to lose that.
There's a gift in here. There is a gift in here. Let's take another break, and we will wrap up with a prayer on AI, which will be either artificial intelligence or authentic intelligence. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We've spent an episode today talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and the implications of artificial intelligence and what happens when we lean on it too much and what happens when it slips out from under us and the amazing possibilities that it brings to us. So this has been a wonderful conversation, and it's a great topic. And Carol, loved your story about the prayer books, because if you have a prayer book, then it can be a wonderful way to get started with a prayer. And if you don't have a prayer book, it doesn't mean you can't do prayer. It just means you get to start someplace different. So we're going to do a prayer today about AI. And it's not praying to the God of artificial intelligence. It is understanding where the line is between artificial intelligence and authentic intelligence. There is a God-given gift that each of us possesses, which is that awareness. There is something that has brought consciousness into our experience. And we describe it in the prayer. There's one power and presence, one love, one source, one intelligence, one creative power that creates everything. That one has created each of us. We call it spirit or nature or God or the Big Bang, whatever it is that we call it. It is the source from which everything is blossoming. Everything that exists everywhere is that one expressed in a unique way. And it continues to express and unfold and evolve itself as all of its creation. Everything is that divine presence taking specific and particular form. That includes me and each person within the sound of my voice. That includes all of the scientists and technicians and inventors who are involved in creating artificial intelligence. It includes all of the ideas and all of the content that is loaded into the artificial intelligence engines so that they have an understanding of human knowledge and experience and possibilities. And that artificial intelligence is a wonderful, valuable, uplifting tool that brings more good into our lives. And the key point here is that it brings more good into our lives. The authentic intelligence of understanding exactly when it is perfect to use the AI tools and when it is preferable to allow our own intuition and guidance and knowing without knowing why to be the influential factor. Understanding and awareness and knowing is available without having a specific list of facts that make it true. It is possible to have an aha moment. It is possible to have a brilliant insight. It is possible to have a gestalt, to know something is true and then be able to chase it down and have it turn out to be true. And that is not something that is artificial. That is something that is authentic. And that capability indwells each of us. So right now, I set the intention in this practical prayer for each one within the sound of my voice to being that authentic, intelligent self that we are. To be engaged in using all of the tools and all of the techniques and all of the offerings that are available to bring more richness and sweetness and goodness and uplift into our lives. And to do that which is ours. To allow the understanding, the insight, the ideas to bubble up and pour forth. There is no need to think that we are secondary or less than to the machinery that can think up answers more quickly than we can. And instead understand that the answers that we come up with are informed in so many, many different ways. And those understandings are ours. And by engaging with that and being the truth of that, we are inviting more and more goodness into our lives. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the way that it's showing up. I'm grateful for the authentic intelligence and the way that each of us is using these tools to bring more of that goodness into the world. And so with this deep feeling of thanks, I speak this word of intention, this word of conscious intention, and I release it into that same creative law that creates everything. And I know that this goodness is coming about now. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com,
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.